Taiwan is reopening its borders from tomorrow, scrapping its quarantine mandate and allowing entry to all foreign nationals. And this comes after most major economies have already reopened their borders, sparking a boom in their tourism industries. But because Taipei's move comes just ahead of the island's local elections, questions have been raised over whether the reopening has been prompted by politics. Victoria Jen has more.
It's been a tough 2 years for 54-year-old Eddie Lane. Like many others in Taiwan's tourism sector, he saw a sharp drop in his revenue after the island closed its borders in early 2020.
那整个公司的业绩，因为整个出国的业绩大概在公司占90%，那整个出国的业绩大概就整个掉下来，所以公司整个人数从500多人降到170、180左右，降到今年170、180，那整个的业绩可以用归零来说，都可以这么说。
But business is finally picking up. Since the cabinet announced that Taiwan will be reopening its borders, Eddie says tour bookings have increased by 20%. And as airlines continue to increase flights and destinations, he expects the tourism industry will soon return to the pre-pandemic levels.
那我预计大概最快，如果真的整个旅游业要恢复到疫情前的话，应该最快的话，如果顺利，最快要明年的下半年。 慢的话，真的就是要2024。
Taiwan's tourism industry had accounted for some 4 to 5% of the island's GDP before the pandemic. But it's not the only sector that stands to benefit from the reopening. A recent survey showed that 91% of companies thought it was important for Taiwan to reopen its borders. Even so, some observers had assumed that the Tsai administration would only reopen borders after local elections on November 26. After all, a sharp uptick in COVID-19 cases from now until then could potentially affect her party's performance in the polls. And just last week, Taiwan's infection number was increasing by about 4,400 a day, among the highest in the world.
一旦开放国门了以后，它会维持在世界染疫率第1的这个位置，可能会维持个一段时间。那刚好这个时候要进入到投票，那这个对民进党来讲，确实压力就非常的大。
But waiting too long to reopen Taiwan's borders could also backfire on the government, especially as other economies in the region have already pushed ahead with their reopening. They could be criticized as being politically motivated. And then there's the economy. In August, the government had cut its growth forecast for this year to 3.76, down nearly half from 6.57% last year, largely due to inflationary pressure and slowing global demand. And it could revise it down again next month.
经济的这个萎缩呢，可能会让选民他感受很强烈，因此呢，赶快开放国门呢，争取经济发展的机会啊。那么某种程度上呢，在选举里面降低负面效应啊，这个我想是开放国门的一个考量。
He also suggested that if the reopening does manage to boost Taiwan's economy, it could turn the ruling Democratic Progressive Party's fortunes around in the coming vote. Based on various surveys, the ruling DPP is clearly trailing behind the opposition Kuomintang. In fact, some estimate that the DPP could lose as much as 2/3 of the 22 counties and cities up for grab, posing a serious threat for the DPP's chances of winning the presidency in 2024. But even as the reopening goes ahead, the DPP government is not taking any chances COVID-wise. It plans to keep its mask mandate until at least the end of the year. Victoria Jen, CNA, Taipei.